What's up everyone, my name's PlatinumHowler, coach of your Coquitlam Red Gyarados, and today I'm bringing you my Week 4 match of the IBL versus Clutchsometimes and his Kansas City Kingdras. You can see his team over on the right side of the screen. His two Z users are Landers T and Vikavolt. So last week we took a pretty fat L due to some below average team building. But this week I feel like I put quite a bit more into my team. I am pretty happy with the way that it turned out. I hope that I can get my play back to the level where it needs to be this week, and see if I can get back on the winning track here. So we are gonna start off with this Wigglytuff. And this is the first Z move that we are bringing this season, and it's going to be on one of our tier 5 mons. So the reason I knew that I wanted to have a Z move on Wigglytuff from the start, because it could be a pretty darn good switch into his Mega Absol. So I think with this investment, knockoff from him is only doing about like roughly 30%. Because I resist the knockoff, and then it is not doing maximum damage because he's not knocking off an item of mine. So at first I wasn't sure exactly what Z move I wanted. I was thinking about maybe just running Z Stockpile to give my Wigglytuff more longevity, because Z Stockpile boosts my defense and also heals my HP. But I decided on using this more as just a mon that can get up Stealth Rocks, and it can use Dazzling Gleam to knock out the Absol if it starts setting up Swords Dance or something. I can toxic things like the Sylveon that would otherwise just Wish Protect in front of me forever. And then I decided, okay, I'll put Z Fire Blast on this thing, because he has a number of things that will take significant amounts of damage from Z Fire Blast that would otherwise be okay responses to Wigglytuff. Roserade, for example, dies to an Inferno Overdrive. So if he leads with a Roserade against this, which will most likely be my lead, he definitely won't be expecting me to stay in, and I have a hard time seeing him going for Sludge Bomb when I have a Celesteela in the back. So I think that I would be able to stay in and click Inferno Overdrive to knock that thing out right away. Now, if he does stay in and goes for the Sludge Bomb, he will probably kill me, and that would really suck. But I have a hard time seeing him doing that if he's going to be leading with the Roserade of all things. This can also do a nice chunk to a Jirachi. It's not going to knock out his Jirachi unless he has absolutely no investment in HP or special defense or anything like that, but it will at least knock him down to a range where pretty much any other attack from the rest of my team can knock him out. I also threw a tiny bit of speed into this Wigglytuff so that I might be able to outspeed his Vikavolt, and if I do, then I should also be able to knock that thing out with an Inferno Overdrive. Take note, we also do have the competitive ability this week rather than Frisk. If he leads with his Landers T against this, then I will be getting +2 in special attack, and I will be hitting pretty much everything except for the Sylveon really hard. If he brings in Sylveon to wall this, then I'm happy getting a Toxic off against him. Hopefully he won't have the Heal Bell to heal himself off, but if he does have Heal Bell, then I think I can, I know that he probably doesn't have Toxic to hit something like my Hippowdon, for example. Next up, we're going to have this Mega Gallade, which is our primary win condition. Now, he has basically the only thing that I really fear that he has to outspeed this is the Mega Absol, and he should definitely be running Play Rough on it, because that hits my Hydreigon for 4 times super effective damage, and it'll also hit Mega Gallade super effectively. So Mega Absol is one thing that I definitely need that thing to be down before this thing can sweep. He also has the Talonflame that can outspeed this, but I do have a Hippowdon in the back, which is very difficult for him to break. So this is kind of taking a page out of our good friend Sharpedo43's book. When he ran, he basically ran this. I don't know if it had Ice Punch or not, but he basically ran this exact set against me when he had Mega Gallade and I had Sylveon. So he was his plan was to Throat Chop the Sylveon to prevent it from going for Hyper Voice, and then he basically gets free Swords Dance set up after that. So Throat Chop prevents sound moves for 2 turns. So the first turn that you click Throat Chop, he can attack you, and then you have 1 more free turn to set up a Swords Dance after that. Ice Punch is obviously there for the Landorus T, and then Close Combat is just going to hit his team extremely hard in general. So moving on to the Hydreigon now. Hydreigon naturally outspeeds his Haxorus by 1 point, but I really don't expect Haxorus to come because Celesteela walls Haxorus indefinitely. So I really don't see it coming. Instead, I have this Hydreigon here that I can pivot into the likes of Rotom, most likely. I don't really think there's anything else I want to pivot this into. Maybe his Jirachi as well. Yeah, mainly just Rotom and Jirachi. So obviously a Sylveon is an pretty easy switch into Hydreigon, so I can predict it to come in and get a Toxic Off against it. I really want the Toxic Off against his Sylveon, that way I just can beat it with more things on my team. So you'll notice I don't actually have Dark Pulse on this Hydreigon, so I don't have a way of touching his Jirachi. And I don't know how I feel about this, because I mean, it's pretty safe on his part to assume that I will have Dark Pulse, and if I switch this in and on a Jirachi, then he should be threatened out. But I decided I need to defog more because I'm not bringing Tentacruel on this team, so I have nothing to absorb Toxic Spikes from Roserade if he were ever to set those up. So 2/3 of my team would be affected by those Toxic Spikes, and I don't want those sticking around, so I kind of wanted to have defog on my Hydreigon to get rid of those especially. Dragon Pulse is going to be our only attacking move, as again it hits everything at least neutrally except for the Sylveon and the Jirachi, and then Roost for some longevity, and the Roselli Berry. With the Roselli Berry, we if we can keep ourselves in a range where we can survive a play rough from the Absol with the Roselli Berry still active, then I should be able to do a ton of damage to it with Dragon Pulse. And if it's taken rocks damage, then it should just straight up die to this Dragon Pulse. Next up, this is going to be an Assault Vest Zeraora that we can, another thing that we could possibly switch into the Rotom. So Plasma Fist Fire Punch is going to be there for the Jirachi. It hits the same things that Inferno Overdrive Wigglytuff does. Hidden Power Ice for the Landorus, of course, we can 2-hit KO that thing with a negative special attack nature, and just we put some 4 EVs in there because it actually helps the calc quite a bit. And then Facade is going to be there in case his Rotom decides to burn us and we need an attack that can actually do some damage to him. I don't believe that he has a Ghost type on his team, so Facade is going to be hitting everything, at least it's going to be hitting everything neutrally, and the only thing that it doesn't hit neutrally is his Jirachi. I believe the only speed that we put into this Zeraora was enough for the Absol, because I'm not trying to offensively check the Talonflame if he decides to bring that. I'm more or less trying to check it defensively with my Hippowdon, which we will get to in a second. Next up, we have this pretty standard Spadef Celesteela. Heavy Slam, Leech Seed Protect, and then Hidden Power Ice for the Landorus T. So we have ice coverage on 3 of our Mons for the Landorus T, so hopefully that should be more than enough to keep that thing in check. I mean, obviously Landorus can't really touch Celesteela that much. I mean, obviously not with Earthquake or Z-Fly or something like that. But if he is a Gravity set, then I wanted just a little bit of defense investment so that I can survive one Earthquake and get some damage off against him with Hidden Power Ice. Obviously his Rotom like walls me really hard. I can't do anything. It comes in for free basically every time against this Celesteela. But Leech Seed Protect will help me, you know, just stay in and get some health back against him. And then this is also, like, once again, this is going to work extremely well with Zeraora. I can, with the Assault Vest, I can take Hydro Pumps from him pretty easily if that's what he decides to go for, like predicting one of my electric immunities to come in, and I will get a decent amount of HP back from his the Leech Seed as well, because that means that he's staying in. And if he goes for the Volt Switch trying to pivot out against me, then Zeraora comes in for free. It gets HP back from Volt Absorb, so these two just pair extremely, extremely well in my opinion. So last up we have our Hippowdon here. So we don't need rocks on this Hippowdon because we have them on our Wigglytuff. So that's going to allow us to run rock coverage to hit his Talonflame if we need it to. Even with very little physical defense investment, he is doing, like, if he gets a Swords Dance up, he's doing maximum like 60. He's doing like 65% to me with Brave Bird or Flare Blitz or something like that. So as long as I hit my Rock Slide, then he is gonna die and Talonflame, and that's one thing that outspeeds my Gallade that is out of the way. So Earthquake can obviously that's gonna hit the Jirachi. I put the special defense investment, I believe, was enough to live a, I want to say, +1 Grass Knot from +1 special attack Grass Knot from Jirachi if he's like a Calm Mind set, and I switch this in against it to get some damage off with the Earthquake. Then I want to make sure that I can survive that hit, because that is basically well, it's the best way that Jirachi would have of hitting my Hippowdon. It would basically, him carrying Grass Knot would basically just be like strictly for Hippowdon, but I want to make sure I can survive that hit regardless. And then we do have the Yawn as well. So Rotom, obviously easy switch into Hippowdon. So if I go for a Yawn on that thing, and then I can, if I have one of my electric immunities in, then he can't just like stay in and click Volt Switch. If he does and he is prevented from Volt Switching out, then he will stay in and fall asleep on the next turn, and then he is a lot less of a threat to me. If he does fall asleep, then he might even become setup fodder for my Swords Dance Mega Gallade in the back. So that's going to be our team this week. I think this team has a much better chance of getting a win for us than our team last week did. So hopefully we can play it optimally and get back in the winning column and not fall too far below 500. I mean, our record isn't below 500, but our differential is already, so we definitely don't want to be 500 with a subpar differential, because then we're going to have some work to do in the later weeks of the season. So we'll see you right back with the battle. We're back with the battle, and the first thing that I think to myself when I see Clutch's team is, why the hell is Haxorus on my screen? I really don't think it does any good for him here. I'm really confused why he decided to bring it over something like Jirachi or Mega Absol. Vikavolt is also an interesting bring on his side. It's gonna be his tier 5 Zmon, so we're gonna have to watch out for a Z move on that thing, and it can do damage to just about everything on my team. Talonflame is going to be his Fastmon of choice to check my Mega Gallade, but I'm not too afraid of it because I do have the Hippowdon to pretty much beat it 1v1 every single time. We also don't see the Roserade on his side. That means no Toxic Spikes setting against us, making me kind of regret bringing the Defog on Hydreigon, because that was pretty much the only thing that I brought it for, was to get rid of Toxic Spikes from his Roserade. So I wish I had probably stayed with another move like Dark Pulse or something, even though that wouldn't have really helped me because Jirachi didn't end up coming either. The last two mons on his team that didn't come that I am not surprised to see left on the bench being the Sandslash and his Hariyama. We are going to jump right into the battle now, and I'm leading off with my Wigglytuff for the second time this season. The first time it was a Fling Toxic Orb lead, but this time it is more of a Stealth Rocks league, and I do have the Z move to potentially blow against this Vikavolt right here, but I decide not to go for it because I don't know if my Vikavolt is going to be outspeeding, or excuse me, I don't know if my Wigglytuff is going to outspeed the Vikavolt, and if he Volt switches out into something like this Rotom here or his Sylveon that could easily take my Z move, then it kind of just gets wasted. So I decide to go for the Stealth Rocks. It turns out he is faster. But one thing that I did not consider is if he stays in to try and defog them away immediately, is that he's going to activate my competitive. So I really wish that I had gone for Dazzling Gleam here instead of Toxic. That was a big misplay because Toxic on the Rotom is going to help later on in the game, but the Dazzling Gleam damage I think would have been much better. And I also make another misplay here by not going for my Stealth Rocks again. I was thinking that he was going to Volt Switch out into his Sylveon, and I want to get that Sylveon Toxic, as I mentioned numerous times in my team builder. But turns 3 and 4, the match is going to go very sour for me really quick because I miss the Toxic against this Talonflame, and as I switch in my Hippowdon to my dedicated counter to this Talonflame, he fucking burns me with the first Flare Blitz. This pissed me off immensely. Immensely. You have no idea how much this tilted me. Hippowdon can no longer beat this Talonflame. I burn his Charty Berry. Okay, right. He would have been able to live one Rock Slide regardless. But now, this Vikavolt, which is really annoying for my team, is a free switch-in to my Hippowdon. While burned, it's only doing like maybe 20% to it. I pulled the double into Hydreigon there, possibly expecting a Rotom switch, but he's very free to make the Vikavolt switch, the more offensive switch, because he got the burn against my Hippowdon. So I have to bring in my Wigglytuff to sack it off. Now I'm not leaving Hydreigon in to go for a Dragon Pulse, as that's my best thing to hit it. Whoopee, I get a Fire Punch burn against the Vikavolt, but that doesn't mean shit because he's not a physical attacker. He's going to blow his Z Bug Buzz Savage Spin out against my Zeraora, and I'm going to be able to survive this hit because I am Assault Vest. Fire Punch doing just about 50%, which I kind of expected it to do more. I know Vikavolt is pretty bulky on the physical side, but I am Adamant Max Attack Zeraora, so I was a little bit surprised that it didn't do more. But I do predict his switch out on this turn into the Landorus, pull the switch into Celesteela. I'm not going to play Celesteela the best on these turns either. I am going to go for Elite Seed on the first turn if he wanted to U-turn out immediately, but he does stay in and go for the knockoff, which is a fair play. But on this turn, I don't know why I didn't click HP Ice, because Landorus is his only potential Stealth Rocker on this team since he did not bring the Jirachi. So it only makes sense that he will want to get the Stealth Rocks up on this turn. I should have gone for HP Ice instead of the double Leech Seed, and now I know that he is going to be switching out. If he has U-turn, he's going to click it here, so I will go for Protect to get the extra little bit of Leech Seed damage off against him. He does go for U-turn, and I'm going to be able to heal back up to full HP thanks to the Leech Seed. And now I'm actually going to decide to bring Hippowdon back in to get the Rocky Helmet damage off against him as he goes for U-turn again. So when this Landorus comes out, it's going to be just below 50%, and I should be able to kill it with Ice Punch from my Glade. I'm thinking even if he is Yachi Berry, since I didn't break it with my Celesteela when I had the chance. I actually don't have a clue what item that Landorus was, but if it was Yachi Berry, then not going for Hidden Power Ice with Celesteela definitely was a huge play, or a huge misplay, excuse me. So this Vikavolt comes in. I hope that I can maybe live a Bug Buzz. I sure as hell will not live an Energy Ball, but unlike Oh yeah, this thing gets Roost, so I am going to have a hell of a time trying to knock this thing out, and it's going to be able to constantly do a ton of damage to everything. So on this turn, he goes for the Energy Ball as I switch into Celesteela and take pretty much nothing from it. Obvious play is obvious. I am definitely baiting him to go for an electric move into my Volt Absorb Zeraora. I make that play right away, not trying to go for, not protect stalling him or trying to play mind games with them. He makes that prediction. I wasn't sure whether or not he would fear my Celesteela having something like Stone Edge to hit his Vikavolt, so I don't know how threatened he felt by my Celesteela, but knowing that my only 2 attacking moves were Heavy Slam and HP Ice, there was nothing I could do to it. He had really nothing to fear, but so he made the right play just by going for the Bug Buzz. I bring in my Glade, go for Swords Dance to see if I can knock something out with +2 close combat, but he does make the right play of going for Volt Switch and gets a crit, which is great. Not something I needed to see to kind of help me trying to get back into this game. If he stayed in and went for Bug Buzz, then I could get a kill right there, but he made the correct play by just Volt Switching out. And the crit is going to bring me down to 25% almost. I have to switch out against his Talonflame that goes for Brave Bird, and I predict his Roost right here and go for the Earthquake, but it doesn't even do 50% to him because my Hippowdon is burned by his Flare Blitz. Like, come on, man. I 1v1 this Talonflame every single time. He doesn't even have Will-O-Wisp on his set. He has Taunt over Will-O-Wisp. He can sit here and click Roost for as long as he wants, and I'm losing HP constantly because I'm burned. This is just, that piece of hacks right there just totally flipped the game on its head. I don't know what I can do now to beat this combination of his. He can just bring his Vikavolt in against my Hippowdon so many times. I'm forced to bring in Hippowdon against his Talonflame every time he comes in to try and revenge kill me. I get my Hydreigon in again, once again predicting his switch out of Talonflame against my Hippowdon. I'm going to go for Dragon Pulse this time just in case he stays in and Dragon Pulse knocks him out, but he does pull the switch into the Sylveon. And I'm going to stay in and go for Toxic against this, but I miss the Toxic! I missed my first Toxic against him. I have a Roselli Berry to live a hit from him if I really wanted to. I need this stupid Sylveon Toxic so I can maybe 1v1 this with Hippowdon if I really needed it to, but that is not going to happen at least just yet, because he gets the Yawn off me, predicting my switch into Celesteela, I'm guessing, and now I have to pull that switch into Celesteela, and he can bring in his Vikavolt as a middle ground play because it's great to come in against Celesteela, and it can't be Toxic because he is already burned by my Zeraora's Fire Punch. So yeah, gets a big chunk of Volt Switch damage off against me, against my Celesteela. Not sure if you noticed, but I missed Leech Seed against the Rotom, which is great. And now he can just Volt Switch around my team freely. I'm going to try to wear this Rotom down with some Toxic damage here, pull the switch into my Hippowdon so that he can't get the switch out into anything that he wants. And then on this turn, as he tries to go for a Hydro Pump, I'm going to bring in my Hydreigon to resist that, and then the Toxic damage is going to definitely bring this Rotom down to a range where my Gallade can probably kill it with a close combat. So on this turn, I do go for the Toxic, predicting this Sylveon to come in again. Hopefully I don't miss this time. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I need to calm down a little bit. We do get the Toxic off against the Sylveon. So now I am thinking that I might have a chance to live the Hyper Voice from him. This is probably a bit of a misplay on my part. I should have gone for Roost on this turn so that I could guarantee live his Hyper Voice. Of course, I didn't have the Roselli Berry to live a hit from the Sylveon. I had it for the more so for the Absol that didn't come. But if I had gone for Roost on the first turn and then clicked Defog, I would have gotten a Hazards away and forced him to take an extra turn of Toxic damage, but that's not really going to matter too much. I'm now down 3-6. My only chance of winning this game is, well, I don't think I have a chance of winning this game, to be honest. But I bring my Gallade in here to go for the Throat Chop. He does try to go for the Hyper Voice, which fails because he Throat Chop it makes sound moves ineffective. They don't work on that turn. So go for Ice Punch to try to knock out his Landorus. But in comes the Talonflame, and he gets a Flame Body Burn against me! What the heck, man? Just every single possible thing that could go wrong, it just feels like is just screwing me over here. He goes for Roost. He can click Roost as much as he pleases. Okay, great, I get a crit with Close Combat, which actually does decent damage to him because he's lost his flying typing, so that was a neutral hit. It doesn't do anything to him because he just keeps burning me with this Talonflame by sheer luck. I know that he would have just gone for Brave Bird on that turn if he didn't burn me, but just like, this Talonflame should have been dead so long ago. It should have been toxic by my Wigglytuff. I maybe could have had Rocks Up if I had played a little bit better. This Hippowdon should never be burned. It should be able to do tons of damage to it with Rock Slide. And if he were toxic, he couldn't just sit there and roost in front of my Hippowdon for days, and I could get Earthquake damage off against him too. But now, with my only two Mons remaining being my Hippowdon and my Celesteela, all he has to do, bring the Vikavolt in, click Roost to keep himself healthy. That was actually a crit Rock Slide right there. That is going to not help me one bit. So yeah, this Vikavolt sits in front of me for the rest of the game. He roosts up to as much HP as he needs, clicks attacks to kill my Hippowdon and Celesteela that cannot do any damage to him. And that is going to be a 6-0 loss to the Kansas City Kingdras. And I just need this freaking replay to end so I can end this goddamn video because I am so pissed off about how this game went, man. Okay, I didn't play the best against his Wigglytuff, or sorry, with my Wigglytuff at the very beginning. I forgot that he might try to go for Defog that would proc my competitive. Could have got some big damage off against the Rotom, and then I chose not to keep my rocks up because I wanted his freaking thing poisoned. That I didn't get poisoned until the second Toxic on my Hydreigon or whatever. I didn't play Celesteela very well against his Landorus either. Those are, like, I'm just using examples of things that I didn't do well to prove that I didn't play my best and I didn't necessarily deserve to win this game. But I sure as hell did not deserve to get handed a 6-0 right here. GG to Clutch, I guess. I guess that was a good game. Clutch is a really good player. I thought he played very well in this game. He is a good battler. Make sure you go check him out. He's pretty new to the YouTube Wi-Fi scene, so go show him some support. There's no doubt that this match turned on turn 4. Turned for the worst, I should say, on turn 4 when his Talonflame got the burn off against my Hippowdon. It's at times like those that I wish he was like Sheer Force on Talonflame or something so that he couldn't burn me. Because then I definitely would have been able to beat him every single time. Also, him not being toxic on turn 3 was pretty annoying. Yeah, that Talonflame, just every bit of hacks that it could have, it pulled out of its hat. That was definitely, without a doubt, one of the most frustrating battles that I have ever had. I'm not so annoyed at the fact that I lost, period, because I could have done a lot of things better, I think, in the early game. But I'm just annoyed at the constant hacks that prevented me from getting back into the game when I made certain double switches to try to get myself back into the game, try to at least salvage some points of differential, but Clutch did well. Either way, he had a good team that made it really hard for me to get momentum back, and the hacks that he received certainly didn't help that either. So Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say about this game. This was a really, really stupid game from start to finish. Congrats to Clutch for boosting his differential dramatically. That's going to help him later on in the season, but it's going to make my road to the playoffs a hell of a lot more difficult. I pretty much need a win next week because my differential now at 2-2 -7 is not good. Not good at all. So if you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for future IBL uploads. And next week we will be back for week 5 against Garchomp the God and his Lawrence Talonflames. And hopefully we can get a ton of that lost differential back in 1 week. So we will see you then.